Quick guess. What do you think scared ancient humans the most? Lions, snakes, the dark? Those are the obvious answers, the ones that feel right because they're primal, visceral, easy to picture, and they're not wrong exactly, but they're incomplete in a way that misses the actual center of ancient fear entirely. The single greatest fear running through nearly every early human society wasn't a predator. It wasn't a natural disaster. It was something far quieter and far more constant. The fear of being cast out. Let's start with why this makes sense biologically, because it isn't just a cultural quirk. It's baked into the architecture of human survival itself. For the overwhelming majority of human history, roughly 200,000 years, give or take, humans lived in small, interdependent bands, typically somewhere between 20 and 150 people. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar's research on social group sizes suggests this number wasn't arbitrary. It reflects the cognitive limits of how many stable relationships a human brain can meaningfully track and maintain. Within that group, survival wasn't really an individual project. It was a collective one. A single human, alone in the wilderness, 10 or 20,000 years ago, was in serious trouble. No group meant no shared hunting, no shared childcare, no pooled knowledge of where water or edible plants could be found, no protection while sleeping, no one to help if you were injured. Evolutionary psychologists studying ancestral environments have consistently pointed to social exclusion, not predation, as one of the most statistically to, in more serious cases, complete social ostracism. Being cut off from the group, even temporarily, was treated as one of the most severe consequences a person could face, arguably more feared than physical punishment itself. This pattern repeats across the anthropological literature in society after society, on nearly every inhabited continent. Ostracism, exile, and shunning appear again and again as among the harshest available social punishments, frequently more severe in practice than physical violence, precisely because everyone understood, even if only intuitively, what isolation actually meant for survival odds. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because this fear didn't just shape social behavior, it appears to have shaped human cognition and culture directly. Researchers studying the evolution of human cooperation, including biologist Sarah Matthew, who has studied punishment and cooperation in traditional societies, have argued that the intense human sensitivity to social standing, reputation, and belonging likely evolved specifically because group survival depended on cooperation, and cooperation depended on reliable mechanisms for enforcing it. A person who feared exclusion enough to follow group norms, share resources fairly, and contribute meaningfully to collective survival was, in evolutionary terms, simply more likely to survive and reproduce than someone who didn't care whether the group tolerated them. In other words, the fear of exclusion wasn't a side effect of ancient social life. It may have been one of the actual engines that built human cooperation in the first place. We didn't become extraordinarily cooperative animals despite this fear. We may have become cooperative animals because of it. Think about how much of ancient ritual, custom, and storytelling seems to circle back to this exact anxiety. Rites of passage across countless cultures, ceremonies marking the transition from childhood to adulthood, weren't just celebrations. Anthropologists studying initiation rituals have noted that many functioned explicitly as formal reintegration mechanisms, public, structured processes that guaranteed a young person's continued belonging within the group at a vulnerable life stage. Folklore, across dramatically different cultures, is saturated with cautionary tales about characters who wander too far from the group, break taboos, or get separated from their community, and the consequences that follow. This isn't coincidence. It's a recurring cultural rehearsal of the single fear that mattered more than almost anything else. Don't end up alone. Even something as seemingly unrelated as ancient burial practices connects back to this. Archaeologists have found that across numerous ancient cultures, one of the most severe posthumous punishments imaginable wasn't physical desecration. It was denial of proper burial rites, effectively an extension of social exclusion beyond death itself, ensuring the excluded person remained cut off from ancestral or community continuity even after dying. The fear of exclusion, in some cultural contexts, didn't even end when life did. Here's the part worth genuinely sitting with, because it hasn't gone anywhere. Modern humans live in radically different physical environments than our ancestors did. We don't need a hunting party to eat dinner. We don't need shared body heat to survive winter nights. And yet, study after study in modern psychology continues to find that social exclusion, loneliness, and the fear of not belonging remain among the most significant predictors of poor mental and even physical health outcomes across nearly every demographic studied. Chronic loneliness has been linked, in research spanning decades, to effects on mortality risk comparable to smoking or obesity, a genuinely striking statistic when you consider that starvation and predators are no longer the threats they once were. Your environment changed almost completely. Your nervous system's core priorities largely didn't. This is why the fear of being left out at work, excluded from a friend group, disconnected from family, or simply forgotten, isn't some modern anxiety invented by social media and comparison culture, even though those platforms have found remarkably effective ways to exploit it. It's an old fear, arguably the oldest fear, wearing new, less obviously dangerous clothing. 10,000 years ago, this fear kept you fed and alive. Today, it mostly just makes you check your phone. So what did ancient humans fear most? Not the dark, not the predator waiting in the grass, though that mattered too. What they feared most, underneath everything else, was silence from their own people, being the one left behind at the fire, being the name no one called out for, and in some quiet evolutionary sense, buried underneath everything modern life has built on top of it, that's still the fear running the show. We just don't always recognize it, because it no longer wears a predator's face. It wears the much smaller, much more familiar face of simply not being included,